Okay, so I got my big piece of clay here, and it's all slammed down on the wheel. It's kind of aiming for the middle. I got my water, I got my wood trim tools, I got my rib, I got my needle tool, I got my sponge, and I'm ready to go. So again, this is, we're just getting situated here. So my piece is going to be going really fast for this, and my hands are going to be wet, and the piece is going to be wet too. My one hand is pressing from the side and my other is pressing from the top. They're connected because I'm working in unison. Because I want them to constantly be working together. You might notice it's really important that my arms are locked into my legs for stability so that they're not moving with that piece I'm trying to center. And this is when you have a bigger piece, you really need to work your muscles. I am not pressing lightly. I'm pressing really strong from the side and the bottom using the palms of my hands because they're stronger. And you can see it's starting to, it's almost, it's starting to get centered. The wobbles are starting to work themselves out. And again, that's because I'm pressing equal pressure from the side and the top. The reason I curl my hand over sometimes is just to catch that top from getting a weird ridge at the top. You'll be able to feel when it's centered generally, because it's no longer bumpy. I can put my hands down here and it just kind of feels like nothing is flowing between them because it's just so smooth. If there's like little bumps or your hands are wobbling at all, then you know it's not centered. So my piece is centered and I'm now ready to open. I'm going to again lock my elbows. My thumb is finding that middle, and I'm going to use my opposite hand to press that thumb down. I'm going at a slight angle. I can kind of slowly open this up. Okay. I'm going to go one more time to go a little bit deeper. So I don't want this huge heavy bottom. If you don't go deep enough, your bottom's going to be really thick and clunky. Now I'm just kind of widening it a little bit. My fingers are working in unison, just kind of gently making it slightly wider. I'm going to use my sponge now just to kind of smooth out that bottom. Sometimes you get little bumps when you do that from your fingers. And also sometimes you get some big puddles. Okay? Now the next step I'm going to do is pulling out my bottom. Again, everything's got to be wet. I'm going to put this hand and this hand over top of one another, elbows locked. I'm going to drag this along the bottom of my piece, so I'm touching the floor. And I'm pulling this out. Now where you stop depends on what you want to make. Okay, so if you want to go tall and narrow, you don't pull it out very much. If you want to go wide for like a big old bowl, you will pull it out more. Go somewhere in the middle just for my demo purposes here. I'm going to go back to the middle and just kind of smooth out my floor. So again, you have a tendency to get little ridges and stuff like that in here, and also a lot of puddles. Okay, so I'm going to re-wet things, and the next step I'm going to do is pulling up my walls. For that, you want to slow your wheel down a little bit. You want to be going more like a medium speed. Okay? Now, right now I'm just kind of consolidating my lip, just kind of gently squeezing and then dragging my finger across the top to make sure that's nice and solid. Now I'm going to pull up. So for this, I'm squeezing from the inside and the outside and gently just squeezing it as I pull it up. Everything on the wheel wants to go out, so I'm actually pulling the opposite, which is slightly in, which will just make it go straight. Okay, so you can see I've already gained quite a bit of height there with that. I'm almost doubled in size. Now I'm going to fix my lip up again, just with a little pinch and drag. I'm going to re-wet my walls. And now I'm going to pull up again. So I'm just kind of gently squeezing. Now this time I'm going to make a bowl. So I want it to start flaring out a little bit. You can see I'm already getting fairly big. I'm going to use the sponge this time as one of my hands. Sometimes that can be helpful. I don't have nails, so it's not an issue for me, but sometimes if you've got nails, your sponge can help you from inadvertently jabbing it with your nails and leaving marks. That is looking pretty good. Got a pretty nice basic bowl shape. I'm going to do one more pull just to a little bit from the base, but I'm not going to go crazy here. You'll notice it's now tall enough I can't grab it from the top end, so I'm just kind of making sure my arms are really locked. A little bit of a wobble, but that won't be noticeable once we stop. Now I'm getting my rib wet, okay? I'm going to use my rib just to kind of work. So I'm going to hold it in place. So hold it nice and still and just gently working it up. It's going to flare things out a little bit more. See how that kind of changed my shape. I'm just going to use my sponge just to kind of clean some things up here. I'm going to tidy up my lip there a little bit. Now let's stop it and take a look. That looks pretty darn good. The last thing I'm going to do, I have two things I'm going to do. One, I can see inside a very tiny little bubble bump. So I'm going to pop that bubble because that would be an air bubble that would explode in the kiln. We don't want that. And then I'm going to clean up this outside a little bit with my trim tool. So for my inside, now that I popped that bubble, I'm just going to recondense the clay here with my sponge. Make sure that that is fully gone, which I don't see it anymore. It seems to be fine, which is great. I'm just kind of slowly working that sponge up just to make sure we're all good here, which we're looking great. And then the next thing I'm going to do is wet this, because again, everything needs to be wet. I'm not going to worry about that bump that like you can see down here. I can trim that off afterwards. Right now I'm just kind of working a little edge there to take out some of that clay so that I can work my wire cutter in there easily. So then that will be the last thing. Now I got my wire cutter. I'm going to wet it, as always, pull it nice and taut, press it down along the base of the bat, and I'm going to drag it through so that I'm disconnected from the wheel head. And later on, I can trim this gunky stuff off. I'll show you that in a future video to kind of make it just go angle down in a nice smooth swoop, although sometimes people like that. I'm not as big a fan of them. That's a personal choice kind of thing. But you can see I got a pretty large, nice, basic bowl. So that's how you would do that using your rib.